Wait, why is she texting you? My wife, Hannah, barely glanced up from her phone. What? I held up my screen. Emma, my ex. She just sent me a weird text. It wasn't anything major, just a simple, "Hey, I hope you're doing well." But we hadn't talked in over a year, and seeing her name pop up felt out of place. Hannah frowned. Oh, yeah, she probably just wants to check in. I stared at her. Probably? How would you know? She hesitated, because I talk to her sometimes. I blinked. What? Hannah shrugged like it was nothing. We message here and there. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. My wife had been casually chatting with my ex-girlfriend, and she hadn't thought to mention it. I tried to keep my voice steady. Why didn't you ever tell me? She sighed. Because I knew you'd react like this. All weird and suspicious. I let out a short laugh. Yeah, because it is weird and suspicious, Hannah. Why the hell are you talking to my ex behind my back? Her expression hardened. It's not behind your back. I just didn't think it was relevant. I clenched my jaw. It's very relevant. She sighed again, clearly annoyed. Look, she reached out to me a while ago. She wanted to make sure there was no bad blood between us. We ended up having a nice conversation, and I realized she's not the villain you made her out to be. I felt my stomach drop. What does that mean? Hannah gave me a pointed look. It means I get why she broke up with you. Emma and I had been together for 4 years before things fell apart. I won't pretend I was perfect in a relationship. I had my flaws. But Emma had been distant for months before she finally ended things. She gave me the usual, "I just need time to figure myself out" speech, but I found out later she had started seeing someone else almost immediately after our breakup. It crushed me. And when I met Hannah a year later, I told her everything, the good, the bad, and how badly it all ended. She had been sympathetic. She had held me while I ranted about how Emma had wasted my time, how she had led me on toward the end. She told me I deserved better. Now, years later, she was suddenly defending her. I ran a hand through my hair. So let me get this straight. She reached out to you, not me. And instead of telling me, you just started talking to her? As friends. Hannah nodded. Yes. And honestly, I like her. She's actually really cool. I stared at her in disbelief. You like my ex? Hannah crossed her arms. She's not the monster you made her out to be. I exhaled slowly, trying to stay calm. How often do you talk to her? She shrugged. A couple times a week. Sometimes more. I let out a dry laugh. So you talk to my ex more than I do? That's not a big deal, she said, rolling her eyes. That's insane, Hannah, she scoffed. You're overreacting. No, I'm reacting like a normal person whose wife has been secretly bonding with his ex-girlfriend. I snapped. What do you two even talk about? Life, work, relationships. I felt something in my chest tighten. Relationships? She hesitated, then nodded. I took a deep breath. Has she asked about us? Hannah didn't answer right away. That hesitation told me everything. I felt my voice drop. What has she been saying about me? Hannah pursed her lips. She just had some things to say. Like what? She shifted uncomfortably. She said she felt bad about how things ended between you two, and that she hoped you were happier now than you were back then. Something about the way she said it made my stomach twist. What else? Hannah sighed. She said you had a tendency to overreact, that you take things too personally. And honestly, I kind of get it now. I stared at her, my chest tightening. You think I'm overreacting? Yes, she said bluntly. You're getting worked up over nothing. It's not like I'm cheating. We're just talking. But that wasn't the point. The point was that my wife, had been secretly talking to my ex, defending her, and letting her feed her opinions about me into her head. And the worst part, she didn't even see why that was a problem. I needed to find out exactly how deep this went, because something about Hannah's reaction wasn't sitting right with me. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I had no idea who I could trust. I didn't bring it up again that night. I needed time to think. The next morning, Hannah was acting completely normal, like nothing had happened. She kissed me goodbye before work, sent me a meme in the afternoon, and asked what I wanted for dinner like we hadn't just had one of the weirdest conversations of our marriage. But I wasn't letting it go. As soon as she left, I grabbed her iPad. She rarely used it, and I knew it was still logged into her messages. I hesitated for a second. I had never gone through Hannah's phone before. I never thought I'd need to. But this wasn't about some random insecurity. This was about my ex, the woman who had broken my heart, getting into my wife's head. So I opened her messages, and my stomach dropped. The first thing I noticed was the sheer volume of texts. She and Emma had been talking every single day. Some messages were short, just memes, quick hellos, but others were long. And the ones that caught my attention, the ones about me, I started scrolling. Hannah, he's been moody all week. Emma, sounds about right. He always hated talking about his feelings, lol. Hannah, he can be so stubborn. Emma, OMG, I know. He used to just shut down instead of admitting when he was wrong. It drove me crazy. Hannah, I swear, sometimes I feel like I'm the only adult in this relationship. Emma, girl, I felt the same way when I was with him. I felt my blood go cold. My wife had been venting about me to my ex-girlfriend. And Emma? She wasn't just listening. She was agreeing, feeding into it. I kept scrolling, my heart pounding. Then I saw something that made me freeze. Emma, I still think he and I could have worked things out if he'd just grown up a little. Hannah, yeah, I get that. I had to reread it 3 times. My wife agreed that my relationship with my ex could have worked out. I felt physically sick. I sat there for a long time, just staring at the screen. I don't know what I had been expecting to find, but this was worse. I wasn't just being paranoid. Hannah was letting Emma influence the way she saw me, and she had been hiding it for months. I had 2 options. 1, I could sit on this information and wait for the right moment to bring it up. 2, or I could confront Hannah the second she got home. I chose option 2. She walked through the door a few hours later, humming to herself. When she saw me sitting on the couch, iPad in hand, her expression shifted. You went through my messages? I held up the screen. Explain this. She sighed, tossing her bag onto the counter. I knew you were going to snoop. I ignored that. Why are you talking to Emma about me? Why are you letting her trash me? And just agreeing with her. Hannah rolled her eyes. Oh my God, you're being so dramatic. Dramatic, I repeated, standing up. My ex, the woman who left me for someone else, is sitting here telling my wife that I wasn't good enough for her, and you're just nodding along? Hannah crossed her arms. It's not that serious. Not that serious? I laughed, but it didn't sound right. Hannah, do you even hear yourself? What if the roles were reversed? What if I was talking to your ex, agreeing with everything he said about you? She hesitated for just a second, but then she scoffed. It's different. How? She didn't answer. I shook my head. You've been defending her, lying to me, letting her trash me. I didn't lie to you, she snapped. You hid it from me. Because I knew you'd react like this. Like what, Hannah? Like someone whose wife has been emotionally cheating with his ex. Her face twisted. Oh, please, don't be dramatic. That was it. That was the moment I realized Hannah wasn't going to admit she was wrong. She didn't care that this hurt me, because, deep down, I don't think she ever saw a problem with it in the first place. I don't remember much of what I said after that. I just remember feeling done. Hannah kept throwing out excuse after excuse. How I was overreacting. How she didn't see the big deal. How I was making it into some kind of betrayal when it really wasn't. And maybe that was the most messed up part. She genuinely didn't think she had done anything wrong. Why does it even matter? She asked, exasperated. It's not like I cheated. I stared at her. Hannah, do you even like me? She flinched. What? I took a slow breath. Because, honestly, I don't know anymore. You talked to Emma more than you talked to me. You let her trash me. You agreed with her when she said she and I could have worked things out. And now, instead of acknowledging how messed up this is, you're just brushing it off. She opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time, she actually looked uncertain. I kept going. If Emma had never texted me the other day, would you have ever told me? She hesitated too long. That was my answer. I nodded slowly. Yeah, that's what I thought. Then I grabbed my keys and walked out. I drove around for hours. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to think. Because this wasn't just a bad argument. This was something deeper. Something rotting in my marriage. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't the first time Hannah had dismissed my feelings. It was just the first time I couldn't ignore it. I stayed at a friend's place that night. Hannah blew up my phone. First, it was the usual come home. Let's talk about this like adults. Then it shifted to, you're being immature. I didn't do anything wrong. Then, finally, when I still didn't respond, she hit me with, if you leave over something this stupid, maybe Emma was right about you. And that sealed it. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I turned off my phone. Over the next few days, I started really looking at my marriage. At Hannah. At us. And I realized something. Hannah didn't respect me. She never had. I had spent years convincing myself we were a team, that we understood each other, that she had my back. But the second it came down to it, the second I asked her to choose between supporting me or entertaining my ex, she had chosen Emma. And the worst part, she didn't even feel bad about it. So I made a choice to. Hannah didn't take me seriously at first. When I told her I wanted a divorce, she actually laughed. Oh, come on. You're not going to throw away our marriage over this. But I just looked at her and said, I already did. And for the first time since this all started, she actually looked scared. Leaving wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Because at the end of the day, I could have forgiven the conversations, the secrecy, even the fact that she liked Emma. But what I couldn't forgive was the fact that she never once thought about how it made me feel. And I deserve better than that. Hannah didn't take me seriously until the papers were on the table. She had spent the first few weeks acting like I was just being dramatic. She barely acknowledged that I had moved out, barely reacted when I told her I was done. It was like she was waiting for me to snap out of it, to come crawling back and apologize for overreacting. But when I actually got a lawyer, that's when it hit her. She showed up at my apartment one night, looking pale and exhausted. We need to talk. I let out a breath. Hannah, please, she cut in, voice softer than I'd heard it in weeks. Just 5 minutes. I didn't want to let her in, but I did. She walked past me, looking around like she had never seen the place before. Then she turned, arms wrapped around herself. You're really doing this? I nodded. Yeah, I am. She swallowed hard. I don't understand. You're throwing everything away over text. I exhaled slowly. It wasn't just a text, Hannah. It was the way you dismissed my feelings. The way you defended Emma over me. The way you made me feel like I was the problem when you were the one hiding things. She shook her head, eyes glistening. I wasn't hiding anything. You were. I cut in. If you weren't, you would have told me from the start. She looked away, jaw clenched. We stood there in silence for a long time. Then she spoke, voice barely above a whisper. She told me you were never good at letting things go. I stared at her. And you believed her? Hannah blinked rapidly, like she hadn't expected that question. I sighed. You know what's funny? I have let things go. I let go of Emma. I let go of the way she hurt me. I moved on. I built a life with you. I met her eyes. But you didn't let go, Hannah. You were the one keeping her in our marriage. You were the one keeping her opinions alive. You were the one letting her rewrite our past. Her lip trembled. I just, I didn't think it was a big deal. I shook my head, and that's the problem. She let out a shaky breath. So that's it. I nodded. That's it. A tear slipped down her cheek, but she didn't fight it. She just swallowed, turned, and walked to the door. She hesitated for just a second, like she was waiting for me to stop her. I didn't, and then she was gone. The divorce was messy. It wasn't about money or property. We didn't have much to fight over, but Hannah dragged her feet every step of the way. She refused to sign papers for months, ignored emails, dodged calls from my lawyer. At one point, she even tried reaching out to Emma again. I know this because Emma, shockingly, texted me, "Hey, I don't know if I should be telling you this, but Hannah's been asking me a lot of weird questions. About you, about the past. I think she's looking for something to justify everything." I read the message, sighed, and blocked both of them. I was done. It took nearly a year to finalize the divorce. But when I walked out of that courthouse, officially free, I felt lighter than I had in years. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad anymore. I was just done. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to move forward. A few months after the divorce was finalized, I heard through mutual friends that Hannah had moved away. Apparently, she got a job offer in another city and took it without hesitation. Some people thought she was running from the embarrassment of our divorce. Others thought she was just trying to start fresh. I didn't really care either way. I had already started moving on. One night, I was out with some friends when my phone buzzed. I glanced down and felt my stomach twist. It was an unknown number, but the message was short. "Hey, it's Hannah. Can we talk?" I just stared at it for a second. I wasn't sure why she was reaching out after all this time, but I wasn't about to reopen that door. I deleted the message without responding. Over the next few weeks, she kept trying. Sometimes it was a simple, "Hey, hope you're doing okay." Other times, she sent longer messages, telling me she missed me, that she had been doing a lot of thinking, that she finally understood where she went wrong. I didn't respond to a single one. I had nothing left to say. Then one evening, I got a text from an old friend. "Dude, did you see Hannah's post?" I frowned. "What post?" He sent me a screenshot. It was a long, emotional paragraph from Hannah's social media. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. The biggest one was not appreciating the person who loved me the most. I let my own insecurities get in the way. I hurt someone who didn't deserve it, and now I have to live with that. I sighed and put my phone down. I wasn't sure if she expected me to see it. Maybe she was hoping I'd reach out. Maybe it was just her way of processing things. But it didn't really matter, because I had already let her go. That was the last I ever heard from Hannah. Eventually, the text stopped. The random social media post faded, and I moved on for real. I started dating again, not rushing into anything, just taking my time. And for the first time in years, I felt like myself. Not the version of me Hannah and Emma had picked apart, but the real me. And that was enough. A year after everything, I barely thought about Hannah anymore. I had moved into a new place, surrounded myself with good people, and even started seeing someone new, a woman who actually listened, actually respected me. It wasn't serious yet, but it was healthy, and that was all I wanted. One night, I was out grabbing dinner when I ran into an old friend. We caught up for a bit, and then, out of nowhere, he said, "Oh, by the way, did you hear about Hannah?" I blinked. "No. What about her?" "She got engaged." I froze for half a second. Then I just nodded. "Huh, good for her." My friend studied me. "You really don't care, do you?" I smiled. "No, I don't." And I meant it. That was the last time I ever talked about Hannah. I didn't feel bitter or angry or even nostalgic. I just felt done. Because at the end of the day, she was just someone I used to know. Someone I had once loved, once trusted, but who had ultimately shown me exactly who she was. And I had walked away, and I had healed, and I was finally at peace. TLDR: Opie's wife, Hannah, secretly befriends his ex, Emma, and starts talking to her daily, often complaining about Opie and agreeing with Emma's negative takes on him. Opie finds out by checking Hannah's messages and confronts her, but she dismisses his feelings and refuses to acknowledge any wrongdoing. When Opie realizes she doesn't respect him, he decides to leave. Hannah doesn't take the divorce seriously at first, thinking Opie will come back, but when he gets a lawyer, she starts dragging things out. She even reaches out to Emma again, trying to justify herself. Eventually, Opie finalizes a divorce and cuts both of them off. Months later, Hannah starts texting Opie, saying she misses him and finally understands what she did wrong. Opie ignores her. She later posts a vague, regretful message online, but he doesn't care anymore. A year later, Opie learns she's engaged to someone else, and he realizes he has fully moved on, feeling at peace with his decision.